Cities come and cities go. Some fall to war, some are swallowed in desert sands, and some are victim to nature's wrath. Luckily, though, they often leave behind ruins. So, although they are lost for a while, we eventually stumble upon their remains. And today we're exploring 15 lost cities of the ancient world. Let's begin with number 15, Herculaneum. In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius on the Bay of Naples lies the ancient Roman town of Herculaneum, or rather it did lie. Once upon a time before the volcano wiped it out. Well, now Herculaneum is often overshadowed by its more famous neighbor Pompei, but this ancient city deserves some props too. Over time, the town flourished under its Roman rule. It became a hopping little resort town, popular with the elite because of its stunning views and luxurious villas. The richest of the rich flock to Herculaneum to kick back and relax in style, but even money can't buy your way out of a volcanic eruption, and the fate of this ancient city is the same as Pompeii's. Well, sort of. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, Pompeii was buried under layers of ash and pumice. Herculaneum, however, was engulfed by a pyroclastic flow, which is a fast-moving mixture of hot gas, ash, and rock fragments. And because the city was covered so quickly, it was really well preserved. Bad news for the residents since they all died almost instantly, but good news for historians since they can learn a lot about what life was like in the ancient city. We really only knew about it through ancient texts and the odd surface discovery. However, all that changed in the 18th century when the town was rediscovered during excavations led by the Bourbon King of Naples, Charles III. Basically, the entire city was encased in a thick layer of pyroclastic material, which solidified into a dense protective shell. So the town's structures and artifacts were all well preserved, and as such, Herculaneum's ruins offer a wealth of insights into Roman life, architecture, and culture. The town's most notable feature includes its luxurious villas, public baths, and the striking shoreline, which is why it was the go-to choice for rich vacays back in the day. Number 14, Carthage. Carthage was a force to be reckoned with in its time. It was once a formidable maritime power, a busy commercial hub, and a center for intellect, culture, and learning. Carthage was founded by the Phoenicians in the 9th century BC, and it quickly became the dominant force in the Mediterranean. The city controlled entire trade routes, established colonies, and challenged the supremacy of rival empires like Rome and Greece. It was located in the Gulf of Tunis, and Carthage was a powerhouse. Its influence was spread wide and it attracted people from all over the ancient world. However, although Carthage was powerful, it wasn't immune to the effects of war. Carthage was destroyed in 146 BC during the famous Punic Wars. However, luckily we do have some ruins left though. Given Carthage's status, these ruins have been widely explored in the hopes that we, as a modern society, can learn more about this city on the Gulf. Life here revolved around trade, industry, and religion. The city had bustling markets full of goods like pottery, textiles, and precious metals, as well as foods. Workshops produced things like weapons, jewelry, and luxury items, and the city itself had a wide assortment of shrines, temples, and sanctuaries. And although the city fell to war, the ruins are fairly well preserved, so it gives us a pretty nice look back into ancient Phoenician and Roman life. Number 13, Troy. Troy. Few ancient cities are as famous as the legendary city of Troy. In fact, Troy is hands down one of the most legendary and enigmatic sites in human history. It's known for its epic stories about the Trojan War. Troy existed only in the storybooks for centuries. It was literally lost. Now, the story of Troy begins in the Bronze Age around the 3rd millennium BC when the city was founded. At first, it was just a small settlement near the Dardanelles Strait, and over the centuries, though, Troy grew into a thriving city-state. Because of its location, it was a coveted prize for rival powers who wanted it so they could gain control of maritime trade in the Aegean region. Now, Troy's claim to fame was from Homer's epic poem The Iliad. In it, the wife of Menelaus, Helen, was abducted by the prince of Troy, Paris. This abduction sparked a decade-long conflict that ended in the city's destruction by way of the iconic Trojan horse. Now, for centuries, no one knew the exact location of the city. Was it real? And how much of Homer's story was true? Well, it wasn't until the 19th century when German archaeologist Heinrich Schliemann started excavating at a site near the village of Hissarlik. To his surprise, he discovered massive fortifications, defensive walls, and a trove of artifacts. All these findings corresponded to the descriptions of Troy found in ancient texts, and voila, the Bronze Age city of Troy had finally been found. But what really happened to Troy? Well, there's evidence to suggest a massive fire swept through the city sometime around 1200 BC, decimating a lot of the structures. This likely caused the mass evacuation of the city, although no one knows for sure. But in any case, the city was abandoned sometime in the early centuries for the first millennium BC. The ruins lay hidden beneath layers of soil, sediment until their rediscovery. Word is still out on what happened to Helena and Paris, though, the part of Troy that's still believed to be firmly rooted in myth. Number 12. Petra. Also known as the Rose City, when it comes to sheer beauty, few lost cities of the ancient world can even hold a candle to the stunning city of Petra. The remains of this city are located in the rugged desert landscapes of modern-day Jordan, where the city was carved into the rose-red sandstone cliffs. Petra is renowned for its incredible architecture, its rich history, and its enigmatic beauty. The city was abandoned for centuries before it was rediscovered in 1812 by Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Brachard. Apparently, he disguised himself as an Arab merchant to explore the area, and lo and behold, he found this long-lost city. Petra was built sometime during the 4th century BC when it was established as the capital of the Nabatean kingdom. Now, the city was strategically located at the crossroads of major trade routes, and it linked Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. And as such, Petra was a bustling city, known for its wealth, commerce, and culture. So what happened to the prosperous city of Petra? Well, it was probably a combination of things. The decline of the Nabatean kingdom, earthquakes, and changes in trade routes all played a part in the decline. By the 6th century, the city was pretty much abandoned, and the people who had once lived there moved on to other regions. Historians have gained a pretty good understanding of Petra through archaeological excavations and historical records, but the oral traditions of the Bedouin tribes have also helped fill in some gaps, since they've been living in the region for centuries. The city had a wide assortment of tombs, temples, theaters, and homes, all of which were intricately carved into the sandstone. Petra is now one of Jordan's most popular tourist spots, but the ruins are fragile, so there are efforts in place to save and protect what little we have left of the Rose City. Number 11. Angkor. Angkor is one of those lost cities that was really never lost to locals, but because it wasn't widely known to the outside world, we deem it lost. The city was located at the heart of Cambodia's dense jungle, and it was once part of the Khmer Empire, and it's best known today for Angkor Wat, a grand and sophisticated monument, which is often called a masterpiece of ancient architecture. Angkor Wat came about in the 12th century when the king Suryavarman II ascended to the throne of the Khmer Empire. He wanted to establish a lasting legacy, as kings do, to assert his divine right to rule, so he commissioned the construction of Angkor Wat. It was to be a grand temple dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, whom he considered his patron deity. Angkor Wat was built, and if his objective was to build something lasting, then yeah, objective met. Today, Angkor Wat is one of the most famous ancient religious monuments in the world. Eventually, though, the city was abandoned, and no one really knows why, but historians generally chalk it up to changes in religious and political dynamics. For centuries, the temple remained hidden in the jungle, known about only to locals, but when French explorer Henri Mohot went poking around in the jungle in the mid-19th century, he came across this extraordinary temple. He described the marvel, complete with its series of concentric galleries, courtyards, and towers, all arranged in a symmetrical layout. He detailed the central sanctuary, crowned by 5 lotus-shaped towers, and needless to say, this sparked interest. The walls here are adorned with intricately carved scenes from Hindu mythology, historical events, and everyday life in ancient Cambodia. These carvings offer insights into the Khmer society, religion, and the cultural practices that provide us with a window into the rich lives of the people who once lived there. Today, Angkor Wat is one of Cambodia's most iconic tourist attractions. Although much of the city is in ruins, it gives us a glimpse of what the city would have been like. The word grand comes to mind. Number 10. Ciudad Perdida. Once upon a time, the ancient city of Ciudad Perdida flourished, but when the city was abandoned, the jungle took over and devoured it. It was built by the Tairona civilization. It's believed that the city was at its peak between the 11th and the 14th centuries AD. However, when the Spanish conquistadors arrived in the late 16th century, they found the city abandoned. They left it to be swallowed by the relentless growth of the surrounding rainforest. But what we do know about this place comes primarily from archaeological excavations, as well as the oral traditions of the indigenous tribes in the region. The city had about 2,000 to 8,000 residents in its heyday. Now that's a lot of people for the time, so the city would have been a significant one, both for population and for the culture in pre-Columbian times. Structurally, the city had a series of terraces that were carved into the mountainside. Now, these terraces were connected by stone staircases and pathways. The people would have used them for agriculture, and they likely grew crops like maize, which is corn, beans, and yucca in the steep terrain. It also had a main hub, the downtown core. It was a network of plazas, temples, and ceremonial buildings. Now, these were all constructed with precision-cut stone blocks. And the people who lived there were skilled artisans, and they produced a wide range of pottery, jewelry, and textiles. Furthermore, the city was a strategic location for trading. Since it was located in the Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta mountain range, it facilitated trade routes with neighboring communities along the Caribbean coast. Once the city was abandoned, though, it became hidden in the jungle. In fact, it was only known about to the indigenous people in the region. It wasn't officially discovered by the outside world until the 1970s, when treasure hunters were exploring the area based on rumors of unfound gold and wealth. Number 9. Palmira. The ancient city of Palmira once sat in the heart of the Syrian desert, but unlike other ancient cities, this city was lost not once, but twice. The first time it was lost was to the desert sands. The second time it was lost was to war. Well, Palmira was a grand city renowned for its magnificent architecture, rich history, and strategic location along the Silk Road. But the city was eventually abandoned, and although there are several theories as to why residents hit the road, no one knows for sure. The city emerged in the 1st century AD, and it was first inhabited by the Semitic people known as the Palmyrines. The city sat at the crossroads of major trade routes, and when I say major, I mean major. This city linked the Roman Empire with Persia, India, and China, so you better believe it was a hub of commerce. By the 3rd century, though, the city was a ghost town. Were environmental changes the culprit, or economic decline maybe, war, political instability? All these reasons are possible, but without any concrete evidence, they're all just guesses. The city's most iconic landmarks, though, include the Temple of Bel, the Temple of Baal Shamin, the Arc of Triumph, and the Agora. The ruins here boast a unique blend of Greek, Roman, Arabian, and Persian architectural styles, which reflect the city's strategic importance. The Temple of Bel in particular features towering columns and majestic courtyards, so it's entirely possible that it was once an epic center of religious worship and pilgrimage. Even so, once the city was abandoned, it was lost to the desert's shifting sands. It wasn't rediscovered until the 17th century. For a long time after its rediscovery, archaeologists studied the ruins of this ancient city to learn more about the people of that time. However, sadly, when civil war broke out in Syria in 2011, a lot of the ancient structures were destroyed by the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. What's left now is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but a lot of the city is now gone forever, which is sad because an ancient city isn't exactly something we can replace. Number 8. Ephesus. Ephesus is an ancient city with a huge legacy. It played a pivotal role in shaping the history of the ancient Mediterranean of the Greco-Roman world. It had humble beginnings, starting out as a small settlement, but over time that settlement grew into a thriving city before its decline in the 7th century AD. The city was founded by Greek colonists, and when it comes to ancient cities and their subsequent success, well, you know what they say, it's all about location, location, location. Ephesus had a prime location on the coast. It was nice and close to a number of important trade routes that linked it to Greece, Asia Minor, and the Middle East. Eventually, though, it came under Roman rule, and once that happened, the city really flourished. Ephesus became the capital of the province of Asia, and as the capital, it was a destination for anyone and everyone, welcoming travelers from all over the Roman Empire. But a proposed combination of factors such as earthquakes, silting of the harbor, and changes in trade routes caused the residents of Ephesus to take up residence somewhere else, and the city fell into obscurity. Today, though, we do have some pretty cool ruins. For example, the Library of Celsus, the Temple of Artemis, the theater, and the Agora give us a snapshot into the cultural diversity and sophistication of this ancient city. And luckily, the ruins are pretty well preserved, so historians can study this ancient city to learn more about how a variety of different cultures blended together to create the unique and once grand city of Ephesus. Moving on to number 7, Tikal. Towering pyramids and sprawling plazas? Well, welcome to the ancient city of Tikal. This city is located deep within the dense jungles of northern Guatemala, and today it stands as an example of the resilience of the ancient Mayan civilization. Tikal was once a powerful city-state, but before it rose to power, it had a humble start. The city started as a modest agricultural settlement sometime around 2000 BC. By the late Classic period, though, I'm talking about 600 to 900 AD, Tikal had reached its peak. It was one of the largest and most influential cities in the Mayan world. However, it was eventually abandoned and no one really knows why. Deforestation, soil depletion, and political instability are all possible reasons. But whatever the case, Tikal was deserted by the 10th century AD. Today, we study its ruins to try to learn more about why this city was lost. The iconic landmarks here include the Great Plaza, the Temple of the Jaguar, the Temple of the Mask, and the North Acropolis. Each landmark speaks to the grandeur of this city, as well as to its power. So what was life like here? Well, given the amount of altars, temples, and pyramids, we know that religion played a crucial role. The city likely saw its fair share of religious sacrifices and festivals to honor the gods, and it was also likely a hub of agriculture and wealth given the many structures within the city. Once it was abandoned, though, the jungle took over, which was a good thing because the city remained well preserved. So much so that it wasn't rediscovered until the 19th century. Its rediscovery sparked renewed interest in the Maya civilization and inspired a lot more treks into the region to see what other secrets or cities lay lost beneath the jungle's unforgiving vegetation. Number 6. Mesa Verde. The Mesa Verde Plateau sits on the cliffs of southwestern Colorado. It's way up there that you'll find Mesa Verde National Park, and in that park is the remarkable archaeological treasures of the ancestral Puebloans. For centuries, this ancient civilization thrived in the rugged landscape. They built elaborate cliff dwellings, villages, and ceremonial sites. Some of the settlements are as old as 1,000 years. They rose to the challenge of harsh environments by building multi-story stone structures, terraced fields, and elaborate irrigation systems. But like most other lost cities, Mesa Verde was eventually abandoned, and for centuries it remained hidden. It wasn't rediscovered until the late 19th century by European settlers. But it really wasn't fully explored until fairly recently. Today, we've come to value the ruins of this ancient city, and the national park there is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so the ruins will be protected while they continue to be studied. But until we learn more, one thing is for sure: Mesa Verde is a symbol of America's rich cultural heritage and an example of the resilience and spirit of the ancestral Puebloans. Number 5. Great Zimbabwe. Great Zimbabwe is located in southern Africa, and the importance of this lost ancient city can't be overstated. Great Zimbabwe is a remarkable place known for its monumental stone structures, massive walls, and detailed carvings. It's one of Africa's most important archaeological sites. This city was founded in the 11th century AD by the ancestors of the Shona people. Over time, it became a powerful kingdom, and it dominated trade routes and was the epicenter for commerce, religion, and politics. At its peak, Great Zimbabwe housed thousands of people, which is a lot for that time, but its decline came around the 15th century. But what caused its decline is a mystery. The city was deserted, and although it's not clear why, archaeologists have given us invaluable information about this ancient lost city. Key landmarks include the Great Enclosure, the Hill Complex, and the Valley Ruins. The ruins feature massive stone walls, complex passageways, and finely crafted sculptures that depict everyday life, religious practices, and royalty. The city was built on fertile ground, so the city supported a thriving agricultural economy. Crops included maize, millet, and sorghum, and the city would have traded these crops far and wide for things like gold, ivory, and pottery. It also had a lot of sacred sites dedicated to ancestral spirits and deities, so religion was alive and well in Great Zimbabwe. Today, the city is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so archaeologists can continue to explore this ancient city and its legacy. Number 4. Zerzura. The lost city of Zerzura is so lost, it hasn't actually ever been found. And as such, this city captured imaginations of people for centuries with the tales of hidden oases, untold riches, and mysterious white buildings. The city is mentioned in medieval Arabic manuscripts and captivated European explorers in the 19th and 20th centuries. But despite exhaustive expeditions to find it, no one has been successful. The first known references to Zerzura date back to medieval Arab texts, including a 13th century book of treasures by Al-Himyari. In that book, the city was described as a white city filled with treasures. However, the city was said to be guarded by black giants, and only those who were pure of heart could enter it. Now, that last part isn't likely true and might be one of the reasons that some people don't believe it actually existed. But for those who do believe, they've spent a lot of time and energy trying to find this ancient city of riches. Zerzura is often described as a city with white buildings, which led to its nickname, the White City of the Desert. Now, these structures were said to gleam brilliantly in the harsh sunlight of the Sahara. It was also said to be an oasis with lots of water and lush vegetation. However, despite countless expeditions, the harsh conditions and the vast shifting sands have kept its secrets well. Perhaps with time, the sands will shift again and we'll uncover this long-lost ancient city. But for now, we'll have to make do with many historical references. Number 3. Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is one of the world's most iconic sites, but what we see today is a far cry from the once prosperous city nestled high in the mist-covered peaks of the Andes Mountains. Machu Picchu is often referred to as the lost city of the Incas, which is fitting since the city was lost to the outside world for hundreds of years. Only the indigenous peoples knew about the remains of this iconic city, that is, until 1911. During an expedition in search of Vilcabamba, which was the last refuge of the Inca resistance against the Spanish conquest, American historian and explorer Hiram Bingham stumbled upon the ruins of Machu Picchu. The city was constructed in the 15th century when the Inca Empire was at its peak. It was a royal estate and religious sanctuary for the Inca Emperor Pachacuti and his descendants, and it had a pretty royal location perched on a ridge overlooking a river valley. The location gave the city natural defenses as well as a pretty epic backdrop for all the ceremonial rituals that took place there. The agricultural zone was built on steep slopes and allowed the Inca to cultivate crops like maize, potatoes, and quinoa. The urban zone featured stone buildings and temples, and they had functional designs as well as some amazing architectural beauty. The most famous structure here is the Hitching Post of the Sun, and one look at it and you can see why it's so revered. This structure was likely an astronomical observatory, and while it is the most famous, the Temple of the Sun, the Royal Palace, and the Sacred Palace, they're all noteworthy too in their own right. Despite all the significance here, though, the city was abandoned sometime during the late 16th century. No one knows why, but many historians believe it has something to do with the Spanish conquest and the slew of pesky diseases brought over by the European invaders. Today, this lost city is one of the most visited tourist destinations in the world, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and an enduring legacy of the iconic Inca Empire. Number 2. Pompeii. The name Pompeii often conjures up images of a spewing volcano and a city covered in lava. In the shadow of Mount Vesuvius, the ancient city of Pompeii once thrived as a bustling hub of commerce and culture in the Roman Empire. Today, however, Pompeii stands as a haunting reminder of the destructive power of nature. The city was decimated by the cataclysmic eruption of Vesuvius in 79 AD. On August 24th in that year, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Now, this eruption was so fierce that it's considered one of the loudest sounds to ever be heard on Earth. The residents here didn't stand a chance. It's estimated that it took around 10 to 20 minutes for the entire city to become engulfed in hot avalanches of rock, ash, and gases. Most of the city's 20,000 residents were killed within 15 minutes, according to historians. The city of Pompeii, buried beneath layers of volcanic debris, was largely forgotten about for almost 1,700 years. In the 18th century, the city was rediscovered during excavations. It was a remarkable thing because the city was very well preserved. As such, it gave us an unprecedented insight into what daily life would have been like for the people of Pompeii. The city is laid out in a grid of streets, and the streets are lined with houses, temples, shops, and public buildings. Among the most famous is the Forum, the Amphitheater, the House of the Veti, and the Villa of Mysteries. Each of these buildings speak to the wealth, sophistication, and artistic achievements of Pompeian society. Pompeii was a thriving city full of busy markets, workshops, temples, shrines, and taverns. It also held numerous religious festivals and ceremonies to honor the Roman gods and goddesses. Had Mount Vesuvius not blown up, who knows, perhaps Pompeii would have become a modern European bucket list destination. Nature, though, had other plans for this prosperous city by the bay, and today it is UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of Italy's most visited tourist destinations. So even though this ancient city was lost to a volcano, its legacy still lives. Number 1. Babylon. Babylon was once a magnificent city nestled along the banks of the Euphrates River in ancient Mesopotamia. It holds a special place in history as one of the most iconic and mysterious lost cities. Flourishing around 2300 BC, Babylon became a symbol of wealth, culture, and architecture. Today, the ancient lost city of Babylon intrigues historians and adventurers, not just for its grandeur, but for the mysteries that surround its decline. It reached its heyday under the reign of King Nebuchadnezzar II. He transformed the city into a dazzling metropolis. The city was famed for its towering ziggurat, its legendary hanging gardens. Now, these gardens, if they really existed, were said to feature lush terraces of exotic plants that cascaded from high stone structures. Babylon was also celebrated for its grand walls and gates, especially the stunning Ishtar Gate, which was adorned with vibrant blue tiles and depictions of dragons and bulls. After a series of conquests, though, the city fell into decline. By the 2nd century CE, Babylon was largely abandoned, and its once bustling streets were deserted. Babylon is particularly fascinating as a lost city because it blends myth and reality. For example, ancient texts and biblical stories like the Tower of Babel tell the story of a city that aspired to touch the heavens, only to be brought low by divine intervention. It did exist, though, and its rediscovery in the 19th century by European archaeologists unearthed some of its hidden treasures. Archaeologists found remnants of Babylon's glorious past, including parts of the Ishtar Gate and the foundations of the Grand Ziggurat. These discoveries have confirmed some of the ancient accounts and the stories. The Hanging Garden, though, has not been confirmed yet, so it just goes to show that it's hard to separate fact from fiction when it comes to this ancient city. In any case, today the ruins of Babylon are a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Efforts to preserve and study the ruins continue, revealing more about the daily life, benefits, and innovations of the Babylonians. But the mystery of Babylon continues to capture our imaginations, and stories of lost gardens and colossal towers still swirl around the ancient ruins of Babylon. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.